Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris here, and I'm bringing you my review of In a Violent Nature, a horror film that's gotten a lot of kind of notoriety lately of its new perspective that it offers on slasher movies, right? So the whole thing, the whole shtick with this thing is basically it's told from the point of view of the killer for, I would say, spoiler alert here, a little bit, but maybe like 80% of the movie, 85% of the movie. I kind of went into it sort of blindly, not knowing anything about it besides that being sort of I don't know, the primary factor for why people are kind of yammering about this and have a lot to say about it. I think it works really well. I will say though that if you're not a horror fan and you don't kind of have a little bit of a history with slashers, some people will find this super tedious and maybe even boring. And I think there are some moments where a little bit of editing, because it's already kind of a brisk movie, right? An hour and a half, a little bit over that. A little bit of editing could have made it a more tightly paced and maybe more effective movie. But at the same time, I kind of understand why the director, I believe his name was Chris Nash. I'll correct that if I'm wrong. I'll double check on that. But the writer director, Chris Nash, I think, there's sort of an intentionality about not making it a little bit more brisk, about letting the camera kind of linger on shots of nature and that sort of stuff. And it is kind of funny at moments, but it's also sort of unsettling, right? I mean, clearly this writer director understands sort of the old saying, it's the things that you can't see that are the most effective when it comes to scares, right? You think about Jaws and things like that, where you don't really see the shark until the end. You do eventually get some clear shots and views of the killer here, but this is basically reverse Friday the 13th, essentially. That's like the most basic way to describe it. And I think that the plot is even more thin than that. I mean, the plot that sort of is propelling and moving the whole thing forward in terms of why this killer even exists, what the backstory is. It's very kind of typical slasher cliche sort of stuff, which makes it kind of humorous in and of itself, but it doesn't really need any more depth than that, I think, to make it work. I will say, too, this has got some of the gnarliest kill scenes I've seen in a while in a movie. Now, it is kind of low budget, right? And so at times there are some acting moments that aren't as great, and some of the effects at times you can tell are super cheap. But I think the practical effects overall work really well and make it that much more engaging and, sort of add to the gross out factor a little bit of it and kind of the hilarity, the maybe intentional, maybe unintentional hilarity of it at times as well. So, I think if you're a fan of slasher movies, it's totally worth watching. This is definitely not going to be for everybody, though. I could see for sure, as I mentioned previously, somebody watching this and thinking it's just a boring exercise because, again, there's not really any music. It's just sort of letting things kind of play out and not moving the camera at all. And at times it does work well. Sometimes it doesn't work. There are a few shots too where I don't really understand the thinking behind the shot. So one example is early on, a bunch of teenagers are sitting around a campfire. The camera keeps panning around them over and over again for like 3, 4, or 5 minutes, and it gets a little bit not nauseating, but just like, why are we doing this? Just let the camera sit there and let them tell their story, their ghost story that they're telling, and all that. But anyway, I found this very enjoyable as someone who loves slasher movies and has seen pretty much all of the main ones. I've seen some people saying that this is now sort of an iconic villain, iconic slasher person or entity in this movie. I think that just sort of happens naturally. I think you can't say something is iconic to make it iconic. It's just one of those things that over time it becomes iconic. So I don't know that I would go there with it yet. It's not, Friday the 13th. It's not Jason Voorhees. It's not Freddy Krueger. It's not, Victor Crowley from Hatchet even, right? I think, if this is born out into a larger franchise, it could be, but I like this as sort of an interesting experimental genre exercise. I found it entertaining and, again, kind of an interesting experience in that way. So anyway, if you've seen In a Violent Nature, let me know what you think about it down in the comments below. And as always, thanks so much for watching.